It's one of the most widespread, yet least talked about parts of our digital lives. It's a huge industry, it's a behavior, and boy, is it a source of intense debate. So today, we're going to unpack the screen and try to get a clearer picture of pornography, what it is, how it might affect us, and the very real human stories behind it.
So first, let's just talk about the sheer scale of this. How common are we talking about? Well, some data from online discussions suggest that as many as 98% of men and 73% of women report watching it. This is not some niche activity. For a lot of people, it's a pretty standard part of the modern media they consume. And that's exactly why it's so important to really understand. Now, for most people, this might just be a casual thing, but for some, it can definitely grow into something more. That's where the idea of pornography addiction comes in, and it really frames the central tension here. It's defined as this compulsive need to keep consuming content, even when it starts to cause real problems, interfering with your job, your relationships, or just your own mental well-being.
And that raises a really fundamental question, doesn't it? How does what we watch in private end up shaping our internal world? Let's dive into some of the psychological theories that try to explain why pornography can have such a powerful pull.
Okay, so one of the key concepts here is what's called a supranormal stimulus. Think of it like this. Scientists have found that a bird might prefer to sit on a giant, brightly colored fake egg instead of its own smaller, natural eggs. The theory is that pornography can act in the same way. It's not just a copy of real intimacy. It can be an exaggerated, almost perfected version of it, designed to be more compelling to our brains than the real thing. Right, so if it has this incredibly powerful pull, that leads us straight into one of the most heated debates in this entire conversation. Does porn actually rewire our brains and change our desires? Or does it just give us an outlet for things we were already interested in? The whole debate really boils down to this: causation versus correlation. It's a classic chicken and egg situation. The causation side argues that watching porn desensitizes you, so you need more and more extreme content to get the same effect. The correlation side says, no, people who seek out extreme stuff were already wired that way. Porn is just the medium they use to find it. So, is it creating the desire, or is it just revealing?
So folks on the causation side of the argument often point to data like this, which was cited in a Reddit discussion that analyzed different studies. The idea that almost half of users reported escalating to content that they previously found disgusting, well, that really suggests that a change is happening over time, not just someone acting on a pre-existing interest. Okay, so if our internal world is being shaped, the next logical question has to be, does any of this spill over into the real world? Let's take a look at some of the scientific research that has tried to connect the dots between consumption and actual behavior in relationships. A major piece of the puzzle comes from a 2-year study by the National Institutes of Health. Researchers followed a group of young adult couples and found a really significant link. A person's frequency of porn use at the beginning of the study was a predictor of their own higher perpetration of sexual coercion 2 years down the line. But, and this is absolutely critical, we have to look at the nuance here. That same study was very specific. While they found this link to sexual coercion, things like insisting on sex or using threats, they did not find a significant long-term link between porn use and other forms of partner violence, like physical or psychological abuse. And just for some context, this study also gave us a snapshot of the usage habits within the group they studied. It showed a pretty clear difference in how often men and women self-reported watching porn at the start of the research. It's just important background as we try to understand the bigger picture. All right, so we've looked at the viewer, at the psychology, at the data, but there is a whole other side to this story that is often completely invisible: the human cost for the people who are actually creating this content. So let's shift our focus to the lived experiences of women who have been in an industry. This quote from a study of women who work in pornography production in Sweden really just cuts right to the heart of it. It speaks to this profound sense of dehumanization, this feeling of being reduced from a person to a product that's bought and sold. And that feeling of being a product, well, that can lead directly to exploitation. This account right here highlights a really common theme: boundaries getting pushed and completely violated. What someone agreed to suddenly changes, pressure gets applied, and what started as a job can end with a feeling of being manipulated and coerced. Unlike most other jobs, the work that's done here is permanent and it's public. And that creates this unique kind of digital trap. The footprint is indelible, which leads to this feeling that even if you leave the industry, you can never really escape your past.
That idea that the damage has already been done can be this incredibly powerful force keeping people in situations they desperately want to leave.
So, what happens when someone does manage to get out? According to this testimony, what's waiting on the other side is often just profound isolation. Your old social circles might be gone, the community you had inside the industry is now behind you, and it just leaves this void that can be incredibly hard to fill. That feeling of being trapped, whether you're a consumer struggling with a compulsion or a performer trying to find a way out, it really highlights the need for a clear path forward. So, for our last section, let's switch gears and look at a structured, evidence-based approach for people who want to change their behaviors. A major tool here is cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. Now, this isn't about just using willpower. CBT is built on this simple but really powerful idea. Our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions are all connected. So if you want to change a behavior, you have to start by identifying and challenging the thought patterns that are driving it in the first place. And the great thing about CBT is that it offers a clear, actionable toolkit. First, there's cognitive restructuring, where you actively challenge those distorted thoughts. Then, behavioral interventions, where you come up with new activities to replace old habits. It also uses mindfulness to help you recognize your triggers before they take over. And, crucially, there's relapse prevention, where you build a long-term plan with coping skills and support systems to stay on track. It's a real, structured path to regaining control. So, what have we unpacked today? Let's recap. First, the impact of pornography is incredibly complex. It's a mix of psychology, media habits, and industry ethics. Second, there's scientific research that points to a concerning link between frequent use and the real-world perpetration of sexual coercion. Third, behind the screen, the human cost of production can be really severe, involving exploitation and lasting harm. And finally, and this is the hopeful part, for those who are seeking a change, proven tools like CBT offer a structured way forward. So we'll leave you with this one question to think about. In a world where there's an infinite amount of content just a click away, content that has real consequences for both the people watching and the people in it, where does our personal responsibility for what we consume actually begin?